Seems I can't make a video without people comparing me to Robin Williams, and that man brings a damn tear of joy to my eye. I love him so much, man. So I'm gonna do a little Robin impression for y'all, okay? This is Robin Williams talking to me about swimming with the alligators. Let me see now, Pappy, you swim with the alligators. If you get attacked, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's a grand adventure. I don't know, man. Go easy on me. I'm just tired, man. I practiced a long time for that, man. I'm sorry to say, but I am not Robin Williams, folks, man. I see all these damn comments, all these hilarious conspiracy videos, man. It makes me giggle, but it also breaks my heart. Because Robin Williams is one of the greatest shining lights in our world, and we all miss him a lot, man. And the fact that I could bring a little joy to your life in a similar way means the world to me. But I also got to say, we got to honor Robin Williams' legacy. Don't let it be tainted by anything that I might do or say. Let him stand on his own. Let his family appreciate him on his own. Don't bring me into this, man. I'm sorry. Let me be me. Let me be Pappy, brother. I'm Pappy. I ain't Robin Williams. It's okay. And if you think I was Robin Williams, it's not your fault. My impression was too good. It's not your fault. It's okay. But please, man, let Robin Williams live in peace, man. He was a beautiful man, and let me be me. That's the beauty of it all.
Sup, sobers? Was that Robin Williams? Allegedly, this is Unc Pappy on his Instagram profile. He's even addressing the theories about him being Robin Williams. He's saying they're not true, but he's also kind of weird about it. And then he impersonates Robin Williams almost identically. So I'll leave it up to you guys. Drop it in the comments what you think. Nestled deep within Unc Pappy's profile on Instagram, you will find a plethora of theories surrounding the fact that this might be Robin Williams, and maybe he just faked his own passing, and he's actually just off living as this Unc Pappy guy on a beach somewhere with his shirt off 95% of the time. But that is just one of many theories that have circulated since Robin Williams passed away in 2014. And with somebody as influential and monumental in so many people's lives, he spanned a career that touched so many different generations, and he explored so many different film roles and just roles in general that not only pushed his boundaries as an actor, but really showcased just how amazing of an actor he really was. And so, of course, with somebody this important and this monumental, you're going to have tons of theories because everybody wants to know what's the truth, what really happened. And though Robin had a not-so-modest upbringing, really living in a giant mansion with his, probably like the maid, his parents were never around, he had a pretty lonely childhood, and he spent a ton of time perfecting the craft that we now know as the late, great Robin Williams. And with the consistent theme that we've seen over the last, I don't even know, I've lost count, like 5 or 6 weeks. I'm not even sure. With Chester Bennington, Chris Cornell, Avicii, Anthony Bourdain, Kate Spade. Have I forgot anybody? Probably. But still, with all of these strange celebrity incidents, Robin Williams is another one that falls right in line with that same pattern. And it just seems so strange to me that this is such a common theme, to be using a belt or using some sort of scarf or band to self-exit like that. But with all of the questions that I found around the Robin Williams case and around all of these other cases, of course, I had to dive a little bit deeper and figure out what the F is going on here, and are we being told the truth? And to quote what some would call a comedic genius, and quite honestly, one of the best actors to ever bless the screen, you're only given a little spark of madness. You mustn't lose it. And in this case, you guys, let's dive head first into this madness.
Let's go. Alcohol.
All right. Welcome back to Sobering Stories, you guys, with me, DJ Petrovsky. And this week, I'm stoked to talk about Robin Williams, because who doesn't love Robin Williams? I mean, if you don't, that's kind of weird. I don't know why you wouldn't. Like, there's really nothing not to like. But he's an amazing dude, amazing actor, and I was stoked to dive a little bit deeper into what happened to him, because yet again, like I've said in multiple other stories, I would specifically recall Chris Cornell, Chester Bennington, and Anthony Bourdain. Those all three just struck me so hard, so weird, and didn't make any sense. I'd say Robin Williams was probably even more of that feeling than the others. It was just so weird. I was like, what? And as things have come out over time, we've learned quite a bit about what actually happened with Robin Williams, and There's quite a few things that certainly do line up and make sense, but there's also a lot of things that sparked a lot of curiosity. So I wanted to dive deeper into that. But before we do that, I wanted to go through some business items. Business item number 1, I moved my camera like 6 inches higher. So I don't know. It might be weird for me. It might be weird for you, but just know that if you're like, what happened? It's like weird. It's not you, it's me. Okay? I promise. It's me. Business item number 2. This is our sponsor for the week. I actually didn't really plan for a sponsor this week, but if there was one true sponsor that I could ever say this podcast and this whole thing could not exist without, it would be my beautiful, amazing, sweet, loving, kind, caring, and completely supportive partner, Kim, because she is just truly amazing. She supports me week in and week out. She didn't judge me when I lost my job and said, I'm going to start a YouTube channel. She was like, that's amazing. And she bought me a computer to make my editing process better. She voluntarily took over my TikTok page, and she's been making all the videos that have been going up on there. They've gained a lot of traction, and they've gained me a lot of subscribers on YouTube. So I'm super grateful for her doing that, because that saves me a ton of time. And she's getting really, really good at her video editing skills and putting these intricate little mini stories together. She encourages me literally week in and week out. But even more than that, she watches all of my episodes. She listens to me literally talk about YouTube nonstop, all of these different theories about what happened to people who died 6 to 10 years ago. So she's amazingly supportive. She puts up with my nonsense. And not only that, but she's always giving me good perspective. She always has fresh ideas. She doesn't just put up with me. She banters with me. She researches with me. We talk about, does this make sense? She's truly an amazing partner. She's the most amazing mother, and she is my favorite person to be around. And I am truly lucky to have her. And like I said, this whole podcast would not even be happening without her, because she's been mostly supporting both of us while I try and get this thing fully functional, get some grease on these wheels. I don't know, just show some love for her in the comments, or you could follow her TikTok, but I'll have to link it in the description because I don't know what it is offhand. But it's just her and doing funny stuff with our dog, which is great. I think you'll love it. But anyways, that's our sponsor. She's amazing. I love you, babe. Yeah, you're upstairs, so it's weird. I love her. But speaking of special people, one of the most special things about Robin Williams, in my opinion, is that his career spanned 38 years. So he touched so many different generations of people, and each generation, each person has their own memory of Robin Williams, probably from a specific role that he played or a specific time period of different things he was involved with. But regardless, everybody knows some version of Robin that they just truly adored and appreciated at the time. For me, I was born in the 90s, so I grew up with mostly the cartoon animated style Robin Williams, who I didn't really see him on screen as much until he was in movies like Mrs. Doubtfire and Flubber, but these are all still kids movies. But there's a lot of other things that predate this that were not necessarily kid stuff, especially his stand-up comedy. That's honestly something I didn't bump into until I started researching his case. But he's one of those actors that you can love one thing or one time period or one genre of type of movie that he does, but you can go venture outside of that and look at other things he's done, and you can truly see how gifted and talented he was to be able to deliver amazing performances, no matter what the role was, no matter how serious, no matter how dark, no matter how intense or dramatic. And he was just an amazing actor. And so it was really cool to see that he just had such an amazing career, and that really started all the way back from when he was very, very young. Robin McLaurin Williams was born July 21st, 1951 in Chicago, Illinois. His dad's name was Robert. He was a Ford executive, made some pretty decent money, really good money. And his mom's name was Lori McLaurin, which is how he got his middle name. And his mom was a former model, and since she didn't really have to work, she was now just considered to be a socialite, which sounds sick. But with his dad working all the time and his mom just going out a lot, he was at home most of the time by himself in a 40-room mansion. That sounds kind of frightening. That sounds like a Scooby-Doo episode. But he would spend a lot of his time just doing impersonations. He would impersonate Jonathan Winters, and he just spent a lot of time really just hanging out with himself, just working on his craft of just kind of improvising and enjoying just witty banter with himself in these different accents.
Pappy, you swim with the alligators. If you get attacked, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's a grand adventure.
But because he was alone most of the time, he would just do impersonations and have fun just kind of working on these different personas, kind of just acting. One of the guys that he really idolized and loved to impersonate and mimic was Jonathan Winters, who is another like American comedian. His style of comedy would be very similar to what we see Robin Williams, very manic, very explosive, very high energy style of comedy. You can definitely see where his roots come from when he's impersonating people like Jonathan Winters. In 1967, Robert Williams, which was his dad, he would actually retire from the Ford Motor Company. They'd pack up their things and they'd move off to Marin, California. This is where Robin Williams ends up going to Redwood High School, and he starts embarking on his acting journey at this point. He's obviously involved in theater at a young age. From there, he would go on to attend one of the most notorious and prestigious performing arts schools in the entire country, Juilliard. Robin did so well in his 3 years at Juilliard that John Houseman, who was one of the big players at the school there, he kind of pushed Robin Williams out of the school, saying like, look, man, you're way more prepared for the real world. We can't prepare you anymore here. You just need to get out there and start your career. Like, you're ready. So he was pretty much kicked out of Juilliard, but not in like a bad way, like in a really good way. Like, dude, you're too good for this place. Move on. And like I said, it's a pretty prestigious, like one of the most prestigious performing arts acting schools in the entire country, maybe in the world. So he was talented. And I mean, he's been practicing since he was like 5 years old, which yet again, like my other stories, they start playing music at 5. Robin Williams starts doing impersonations at 5. Get your kids involved at 5 years old in something, just something. But I'm sure Robin wasn't feeling that way when he found himself working behind the bar at some local kind of hole-in-the-wall comedy joint, just pouring beers, doing his thing, working behind the counter. And I think over time, he just saw these guys doing stand-up comedy and eventually just realized, like, I could do that. I want to do that. And eventually he found himself on stage at San Francisco's Holy City Zoo, little comedy club there. And that's really where he got his start in stand-up comedy. While performing one night, a producer named George Schneider actually sees him perform and feels like he would be perfect for this role that he's got going on with one of the shows he has. And it's like this weird alien character named Mork. And this is kind of where Robin gets his big break. Now, this character Mork was featured on the show Happy Days. It was such a hit with the audience that they decided to create a spin-off show that would feature Mork as one of the main characters. And then they introduced Mork and Mindy, which would be his like Earth pal that he was living with. Created a really interesting sitcom, that's for sure. But this is definitely where Robin Williams immediately skyrocketed to fame. He was making $35,000 per episode. And he was in this show for 4 years. And this was in like 1978 through 1982, when money actually was worth a lot more. Nowadays, that's probably like the equivalent of like $35 million per episode or something. I don't know. I can't do inflation. And you can only imagine, just like most of my other stories, with all these musicians and Hollywood actors and entertainers who find themselves deep in this music entertainment world, there's so many demands, there's so much pressure to keep performing and keep maintaining this image that you have, that you've gotten famous with. And I feel like that was true for Robin Williams for sure. Over time, he'd started developing an addiction to the white powder and drinking. And once he started getting more and more famous, he was getting famous for his manic, very explosive, high energy performances, and that's kind of his persona. And in order to maintain that all of the time, especially when you're being now requested by so many different people and you're such a public figure, sometimes you need a little help to maintain that same level of energy and that same level of positivity, just for the camera's sake or for the fans' sake or whatever it is. And that is definitely true for Robin Williams. In fact, towards the late end of the 70s and into the 80s, Robin says that he started struggling pretty seriously with his addiction issues. And I mean, hell, if there's one thing I know about the 80s, it's that there was white powder literally everywhere. Everybody was doing it. So for him to have been addicted to it, it's not that surprising, to be honest. It was kind of just the culture at the time, especially in the entertainment world. So I can totally understand it. I can totally get it. And for him to be kind of thrust into this kind of quickly, he went from working at a bar to now being on a mainstream television series. Like, making 35 grand an episode. Like that's nuts. But it's not all fun and games, especially not on March 5th, 1982, when unfortunately John Belushi, who just moments earlier was hanging out with Robin Williams, they were involved in the same extracurricular activities. But later that night, after Robin Williams had left, John Belushi passed away from, unfortunately, way too big of a speedball that was administered by a young lady who was with him in the room, some dealer of some sort, and unfortunately passed away. And with the two of them being so close, so wrapped up in the same comedy circles, they were friends from SNL, and honestly, they were just good friends. Like I said, they enjoyed the same extracurricular activities, so they probably hung out a lot outside of anywhere on the screen. But this took a huge toll on Robin. He goes on to tell stories later on that this was a huge turning point for him in terms of his addiction issues and wanting to just turn things around. At this point, Robin was married to Valerie Velarde, which was his first wife. They'd been married since 1978. And at this point, they had their very first child. His name was Zak. And this was actually the moment that Robin decides he has to turn things around. If not for him, he's got to do it for his kid. He literally gives up everything cold turkey and just says, I'm done. I need to be a good role model. And honestly, like, hats off to him, because that's not easy to do, especially having no, I don't know, like external motivators, like going to jail or like having something bad happen, rock bottom status. So it's kind of cool that he was able to recognize that and change things around. And I wanted to highlight that because it is still possible. If you're struggling, you can still change things around and you can still work to refocus and reframe your brain and your mindset. And it is totally possible for you to avoid hitting rock bottom and turn things around. And honestly, that's kind of my goal here, because it sucks that you have to hit rock bottom most of the time to finally decide to choose sobriety. After Mork and Mindy, Robin Williams' career goes into freaking hyperdrive. Like, I swear, he's just constantly making film after film. He's doing different roles that span so many different, just like complete different film genres, completely different character roles, some comedy, some serious, some dramas. And he's always amazing in each and every one of them. In 1987, he gets his film career kicked off with a movie called Good Morning Vietnam. And I remember my mom having that on VHS in my basement. And I think I watched it a couple of times, but I don't really remember what that movie was about. But I remember loving it. And I know it's about him being kind of like a radio DJ, and he's over in Vietnam, I think, doing a radio show for like the soldiers over there. And that was such a high performing movie. It got Oscar nominations. I don't know, just another really amazing showcase of Robin Williams' comedic talent and how he can fuse comedy into kind of a darker themed movie, like something about the Vietnam War. In 1989, he was in Dead Poets Society, which is another truly amazing movie. He gets all these kids hyped about poetry, and just honestly, I wish that was my teacher when I was in high school. Like, super freaking cool. But that was in 1989, 2 years later. In 1991, he starred in the movie Hook with Dustin Hoffman and Julia Roberts. These are some heavy hitter names, man. That means that he has made it. He is huge by this point. And man, Hook was one of my favorite movies as a kid. Still is, honestly. It's a great movie. Rufio, Rufio. You know what I'm talking about. In 1992, he was probably in what most people remember him for, at least from my generation, which would be Aladdin as the genie. And kind of an interesting little fun fact, I know you guys love fun facts, Robin Williams did not want to do that movie. He really tried hard not to because he didn't agree with how Disney merchandises their movies and like tries to turn him into a character and then sell that character and make tons of money off of stuff. So he didn't really want to do that. But because of the writers of this movie having completely written this role just for Robin Williams, they gave him all this creative freedom, so he essentially just ad-libbed like the entire movie. In fact, it was kind of like him just sitting down like Lil Wayne, just spitting out lines here and there, and then they would go with whatever they thought was best. And some of the stuff that he came up with was absolutely hilarious, including the stuff they ended up putting in the movie.
Genie, I wish for you to make me a prince.
All right, baby. Here's a little magic coming at you right now.
We're talking big time. We're talking fabulous energy. Let's really work with you. We're all going to make this thing work because all of us are excited. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Stand back. Give the boss some room.
Tell her the truth. No way.
Only one way to do it, boy. Tell her the truth. I'm not a liar. Tell her the truth.
Say the phrase again. Use it in a sentence. I will tell her the truth. Easy for you to say. No, quiet. Shut the box. Easy for you. Go back in the lab. You know, Al, I'm getting really... I don't think you're him. Haven't I seen your picture in the post office side view?
Bo, 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 where'd the little boy go? All of a sudden we're talking to the big and the bony.
You seem to have been separated from your group. I'm sorry, the evil group has moved on.
This is really a bummer, man. I don't know what's going on here, man. I'm hanging out. Next thing you know, my little dude's gone, and all of a sudden, you're here.
How snake-like I can be.
Beep. Becoming a reptile. Unnecessary use of reptile. 500-year penalty. Come on, kid. See? Gotta get the snake, see? He's waiting for you. Gotta become the mongoose. Gotta duck, gotta get at him, like Ricky Tikki Tavi, see? Look at this incredible performer. Al still staying in there with the snake. What do you think, Bill?
I think the man gonna stick him. I think he ain't got no good chance, but he really gonna hang in there and basically try and stick the snake, but the snake ain't got big scale.
Whatever you said, I'm 100% with you.
I promoted the fight. I'm hoping it's gonna be as best as can, because the snake man is my favorite over 9-to-1 odds.
What do you think? He's got a heavy reach advantage?
I think the man got a big reach advantage. I think he's gonna have a big tongue advantage. He got that whipping tongue that can come at him real quick. He's also got the teeth plus the venom. I think you have to really think that the snake has a big advantage in this fight.
Also, Aladdin made $506 million. It's a lot of money. It was a good movie, though. In 1993, he starred in Mrs. Doubtfire, or is it Miss Doubtfire? No, Mrs. Doubtfire, which honestly probably wouldn't ever fly these days with all the sensitivity going around.
Daniel, hi.
Could you make me a woman?
Honey, I'm so happy.
Yeah, it was a super funny movie. I love that one. I seriously loved that movie as a kid. But man, things really peaked for me in 1995 with Jumanji. That movie was freaking amazing. And I know you guys already know about that movie because, well, who hasn't seen Jumanji? And if you haven't, then do yourself a favor and watch Jumanji. In 1997, Robin takes a break from his typical comedy roles, and he stars in a movie called Good Will Hunting, which was written by Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. Phenomenal movie, super good, and just showcases that Robin Williams can literally be one extreme to the other, and no matter what, he's amazing in every role he does. And to add to that, in the same year, he worked on another comedy movie, like kids comedy movie called Flubber. One of my all-time favorite kids movies. I used to watch that one all the time, me and my brother. Freaking Debo when that robot like almost died. That was super heartbreaking to me. Like, love that movie. Super great. But he was able to go from a Good Will Hunting character and within the same year flip-flop and be a completely different, separate other character, and in both roles he was amazing. And another film that really highlights how versatile he was as an actor is 1 Hour Photo, which is kind of a suspenseful, eerie movie where he works at this photo developer place and he starts stalking this family that comes and gets their photos developed there. It's kind of interesting, super wild, but definitely would recommend that one as well. Like a decade's worth of movies, and I haven't even hit all of them. Just so many good ones. And honestly, there's not enough time in the day to go through each and every film that Robin Williams was involved with or TV show or whatever. The dude was busy. He was constantly working all the way up until 2014. It seemed like no breaks. And one of his most notable final, movie trilogy releases that he had was working with Ben Stiller on the Night at the Museum series. And so that was one of his more notable, more popularized films, at least towards the end of his career. But he was also in Happy Feet. He was in the movie RV. So many movies. In fact, just during the year 2014 alone, he had 5 different projects in the works. Dude was crazy busy. Though Robin's acting and film career was taking off and continuing to see this amazing success streak, his personal life was not seeing the same thing. Unfortunately, him and his first wife would divorce in 1988, likely from all the pressures and culture shock of this rise to fame, as well as being new parents. And he would eventually go on to meet his second wife. Her name's Marcia Garces, and the two of them would go on to have 2 more children, Zelda, which is a super sick name, and the reason for the name is because, well, he loves Zelda, if you could have guessed, and Cody. And so they were born in 1989 and 1991. And things seemed to be really good between Robin and Marcia. It just seemed like a really good relationship. He seemed really happy in it. And the two of them, obviously bringing 2 kids into the world, had a whole lot to bond over and work together on. And his career was still taking off and doing well. But unfortunately, their relationship would also come to an end and would end in a pretty expensive divorce in 2008. Word on the streets says that it cost him about $30 million to like settle out and kind of finalize this divorce. So she got a pretty good chunk of change, and obviously they would split custody with the kids and, you know, just had a normal co-parenting situation. But this kind of wrecked Robin. Robin was definitely in love with Marcia, and for things not to work out, it just hit him really, really hard and seemed to send him into this spiral of depression. Everything I read about it just said that they had irreconcilable differences, so that could mean literally anything. But in 2006, Robin did experience a small relapse, and he did have to admit himself into a rehab center. So there's a possibility that maybe his substance abuse picked back up and maybe he was starting to struggle again and she wasn't quite ready for that. We're not really sure what it means, but something happened, and for whatever reason, it took a huge toll on Robin. But as you can imagine, Robin Williams is fairly popular amongst the ladies. So in 2007, he actually meets another young lady while he's in an Apple store named Susan Schneider, which is really hard to say for some reason. It took me a few tries before I got this one. But they met at an Apple store. He was out just doing his thing. She recognized him, obviously, as Robin Williams. He smiled back at her, and she realized, oh, shoot, I got to make a move now. And he was wearing a camo jacket or like a camo shirt, and she went over and was like, hey, how's that camo working out for you? And he said, not so good. You found me. And bam, love attraction, immediate interest. The two of them would go on to date for a few years, and by 2011, they would finally get married. Robin has 3 kids, and they're all fairly well grown at this point. So the relationship between Susan and the kids could go one way or the other. You know, she's technically a stepmom. Really, it's just dad's girlfriend or wife. They don't really have any say in whatever. They all seem to have a problem with Susan. They all say that she isolated Robin, that he never truly seemed very happy with her. It honestly seemed very much like a rebound situation, like he was bouncing out of his divorce with Marcia. He was a wreck. He was destroyed, coming back from a relapse. He might have just been in a vulnerable place to where he just kind of jumped on the first person that showed him the kind of attention he wanted. We're not really sure, but the kids for sure do not like Susan, and they said that they never felt included in anything. They were never welcome around. And Susan had her own teenage sons that she brought to the marriage. They would only stay at their house, you know, part-time, and then they would stay with their dads the other half of the time. So the whole dynamic was a little strange, but the fact that the kids never liked Susan was kind of a red flag to me, because it's not like they're just young teenage kids that are rebellious and are mad at their dad for getting into a new relationship. It's like these are adult children that seem to have a genuine problem with this new mother figure in their life. But after being released from rehab in 2006, Robin hopped right back on the wagon, and seems like he was chugging right along. Everything seemed fine. And like I mentioned, he was involved in tons and tons of movie and TV projects, so the guy was super busy. Nothing really newsworthy happened until 2014 when he decided to admit himself into a rehab facility again. And everybody was wondering, like, oh God, is he relapsing again? Is something wrong? What's going on? And he says, no, it's just a maintenance, kind of a check-in. Like, I want to maintain my sobriety. I'm serious about it, and I want to just do some kind of like upkeep maintenance stuff. And like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I really don't. That's such a weird thing to do. Like, I don't know if I'd ever check myself into a rehab place. Maybe he was struggling. Maybe he was starting to have thoughts, and maybe he was starting to feel like he wanted to turn back to substance use. But because he didn't truly want to go that route, maybe he was like, instead of going there, I'm just going to seek help. And I mean, we've seen in the past, he was able to cut off cold turkey. He was able to recognize the signs of things getting worse. So maybe that's what happened here. He just recognized that he was starting to go back down that slippery slope. And by that point, I mean, I'm sure he does know himself well enough to know if that's what's happening. Maybe that was what it was. He was just admitting himself as like a preventative measure, really, to keep him from going down this dark spiral. But with Robin's official statement saying that he's really just doing a tune-up and there's nothing to worry about, people did just that. They didn't worry about it. But that would all drastically change in August of 2014. And if you've seen any of the last like 5 or 6 episodes, then you know this is where it gets really murky. It's about 10:30 p.m. on August 10th, 2014. Robin and his wife Susan are just hanging out at their Tiburon, California home. And Robin comes in to say goodnight. Everything seems pretty normal. He says, hey babe, love you, good night. Apparently at this point, because of the fact that Robin has supposedly been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. He is sleeping in a different bed, according to Susan. So he actually sleeps in his stepson's bedroom, or I guess it's both of their bedrooms because it's a bunk bed situation.
You like guacamole? Oh, God! Run!
And so he goes into this bedroom and supposedly is going to go to sleep on this bunk bed. But then about 10, 15 minutes later, he comes back into the room and he's got his iPad. And then he says goodnight again to Susan. And Susan's like, okay, good night. And then he retreats back to the stepson's bedroom where he proceeds to sleep in a child's bunk bed. Now, the reasoning for this is apparently he was having trouble sleeping. And I guess in order to help him sleep better, they were sleeping in separate beds. I don't know. The next morning, August 11th, Susan actually gets up. About 10:30, she decides to leave for work. She sees that the door is closed that Robin had went and slept in last night, so she figures he must still be asleep. So she decides, okay, cool. She takes off for work, doesn't bother him at all, doesn't bother checking on him, doesn't do anything. She just leaves for work. Once the personal assistant shows up at about 11:30, 11:45-ish, they're looking around the house. They can't find Robin anywhere. And finally, they find this door that's closed, and they text Susan like, hey, Robin's still asleep. Like, what's going on? Is he okay? And she says, well, if he's asleep, like, you need to go in there and wake him up. Now, the official autopsy report actually says that when the personal assistant came in the room, first they slipped a note under the door. They didn't get any response, so they texted Susan. She was like, well, you just need to go in that room. So they looked around for something to push that lock in, finally found a paperclip to push the lock in, entered the room, to which they found Robin on the floor. I feel like I've said this literally every episode for like the last few weeks. They're found on the floor. If they were self-exited from being, dangled by something, then wouldn't they still be hanging there? It just doesn't make sense to me. Now, multiple different reports say multiple different things. One of them says it was hanging from the ceiling. Others say it was hanging from the door. Others say it was hanging from being pinched between the door. Some say it was hanging from the doorknob. We don't really know, but all the images I saw just have this thing kind of floating in the air, I guess. I'm not really sure. But regardless, the personal assistant decides, holy F, I gotta call Susan. So she calls Susan and lets her know this is what I just found, this is what happened. And of course, Susan rushes back and obviously a whole investigation ensues and they try to figure out what exactly happened. Robin was officially discovered at 11:55 a.m. Once the fire department showed up, he was officially pronounced at 12:02 p.m. So pretty quick. And obviously he had been gone for a while. And that's actually what the autopsy report would show as well, because rigor mortis had set in pretty seriously. So they didn't think it was something that just happened. This must have been something that happened pretty much overnight or later on in the evening after he said goodnight to Susan. Maybe this is just me, but I would imagine that if you were self-exiting that way, there'd be a lot of like flailing around and like arms and legs like flopping around, making a lot of noise. And I wouldn't imagine that that kind of noise was fairly normal for Robin in his sleep patterns, but in my opinion, I would expect you to hear something like, what the heck was that? What was all that banging going on? To which you would then go check out the room and possibly find Robin and maybe save his life. But that didn't happen. And I'm kind of surprised. Like, I wouldn't imagine it was a very quiet process. And yet again, we have an instance where someone has all of the pills they could possibly ever want at their disposal to take too many of, and yet they choose to go out this way. It just doesn't make any sense. In fact, this wasn't even the first choice. This was the backup choice. The first choice was to try and take the wrists, but obviously that didn't work or wasn't working fast enough or something. So this was second choice. The other valuable piece of information we get from the autopsy report is the fact that the top bunk was completely made and normal. The bottom bunk was not only not made, it looked like somebody slept in it, obviously, because Robin supposedly slept in it, but there was like crumple marks on the bedding and the sheets were pulled up. And if you think about someone who might be struggling to breathe or might be grabbing a hold of something to try and like gain control of what's going on, then maybe the sheets would be kind of crumpled up and pulled up over the bed. So I don't know. It does indicate, in my opinion, the possibility of foul play. Now, at the time, Robin was taking a few different prescribed medications. He was diagnosed, or misdiagnosed, I should say, with Parkinson's disease. But by this point, that had not been disclosed to anybody. Nobody knew that, including his own children. Susan refused to tell the kids, and apparently he didn't tell the kids. Nobody knew that he was struggling with Parkinson's disease. I also did a little digging to try and figure out, did anybody else notice these symptoms of his Parkinson's disease or his Lewy body dementia? And no. There was one instance where he drew a blank on set and didn't remember his line, and he just said, lost it. But that doesn't necessarily mean he's losing it completely. I mean, anybody could forget a line, and that's literally the only instance. And he was actively filming Night at the Museum, the third one, and there was no mentions of him not being able to perform on set or do anything with the movie. And in fact, after he passed, they released 4 posthumous movies, including Robin Williams. And he signed some 25-year, I don't even know what you'd call it, stipulation that his image and anything related to Robin Williams cannot be used for financial gain for 25 years. So you can't AI create an image of him and use it to make money. It's against his actual contract. I don't know how it works, but that's what he did. So nobody else noticed that he was slowly declining. And yet Susan continues to say that he could barely perform on the set of the movies he was working on. So he was on all these different medications, but the autopsy did show there was no alcohol or illicit drugs in his system that would have caused this. The only substances that were in his system were therapeutic doses or normal doses of his prescribed medication. So it's not like there was anything crazy in his system. And this might mean nothing. It might mean something. When they asked for medical records when they were on site doing their whole investigation, Susan had them. She just had them ready and available, ready to go. I don't know how many people just have their medical records just ready to go, but she did. And I know they were going through some health stuff. He was dealing with this Parkinson's thing. They were trying to get answers about what was going on. But that's usually just a few forms they give you, some new updates on your next appointment, updates about what they found out at the visit. But they're not going to give you your full freaking history of your medical history. So I thought that was kind of weird. It almost felt like she was ready for it. But some of the things that start coming out once this news breaks is just all very strange, and it all seems very conflicting. One of the first things that we learn is obviously that he used a belt, but they also say that they had found a pocket knife next to him, and there were superficial marks on his wrists, kind of indicating that he might have tried one method first, and when that wasn't working, he went with a different one. So I wasn't able to see if these superficial marks left any blood or had caused him to bleed a lot, because I feel like that might indicate when they were actually done, if they were done before or after he might have passed, if you know what I'm saying. But there's really no clarification on it. But what we do know is that he did have these marks on both of his wrists, and then obviously he was found unresponsive the way he was. Now, though Susan says everything seemed pretty normal, he seemed fine, he had found his iPad, he seemed happy about that, and then he went to bed, said goodnight. She saw no signs that any of this might happen. His kids have a totally different story. They say that he was actively Googling and searching for ways to get drugs and searching for things about drugs the night before he passed. And they said that that was kind of weird. But of course, the media and everybody around Robin Williams begins pushing this, well, he must have been super depressed. He must have just hid behind this, facade of being a comedian and being funny. And he was just horribly depressed and he just ended up doing this. But Susan is very quick to suddenly let everybody know that, oh, actually he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease roughly a year prior to this, in 2013. He was starting to experience some symptoms in 2012, and they seemed to progress. And by 2014, he finally was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. But what the autopsy would actually come back showing is that he didn't have Parkinson's disease at all. He actually had what is called Lewy body dementia, which is actually a more aggressive form of dementia. It's very similar to Alzheimer's, and it can be a real serious like degradation process. And typically it's about 5 to 8 years that someone who's diagnosed with Lewy body dementia has until they start fully losing it, and then eventually lose the ability to take care of themselves and their brain functions start completely failing them. And so whereas Parkinson's seems to be more of a body neuron kind of a thing, I was kind of looking into it to see like how long someone with this disease might normally live. Robin Williams actually had one of the worst cases of Lewy body dementia that they had ever seen. And it's fairly common for doctors to misdiagnose Lewy body dementia as Parkinson's disease just because of the similarities in their symptoms. They're both very similar, and it's not until the later progressed stages of the disease that you can actually differentiate the two. Once they did the autopsy on the brain, they saw these protein buildups, and that's when they realized he had a pretty serious brain neurological disintegration disease that he was likely struggling with. So immediately, Susan turns to, oh, well, this must have been why he was so depressed. And there are cases that people do get really depressed because they're struggling with this dementia or they've been given this diagnosis, but it's not very common, number one. And number two, it wasn't really on the list of symptoms of Lewy body dementia, especially as you go through the progression of how this disease affects you. In my eyes, I'm not necessarily convinced that he was super depressed over this diagnosis. And what Susan says is that he would have had maybe 3 years left, and they would have been really hard, terrible, painful years. And though that might be true, he also might not have only had 3 years. The average lifespan is typically 5 to 8 years. And as we progress as a society, medicine progresses as well, there's always hope. So I don't foresee Robin Williams being that hopeless. And the other thing that I was really curious about is everybody keeps pushing this, oh, he was so depressed. He just must have been depressed. And he talks a lot about his depression as he struggled with his addiction issues, which is very common because when your brain is so out of whack all the time, it's hard for you to feel stable. You go from one emotion of being extremely happy and super high up to then suddenly feeling super low, super depressed, especially when it comes to drinking and the white powder. Like that white powder stuff literally will mess your brain up so bad. And a lot of the discussions that he has and a lot of the ways that he talks about his depression issues seems to be more past tense. He seems to be referring to how he went through these dark periods of depression. It wasn't still an active player in his life. So I can understand how it might come back, especially with this new diagnosis, but I don't know. Everything seems really strange. And it's like, how do we even know that he had these diagnoses? The only way we know that any of this happened is because Susan told us it happened. In fact, Susan takes a year before she ever releases any specific information or talks about anything really at all. She stays pretty quiet. In November of 2015, she comes out and she does her very first interview where she decides to open up and what she says is set the record straight. Now, what she's trying to set straight, I'm not really sure, but check out this interview.
It's the best love I ever dreamed of. You know, it's what I always dreamed of a love would be. It's just really based on just honor, love, respect.
Robin and Susan had a 7-year relationship, a happy and very private 3-year marriage. But on August 11th last year, life took a drastic turn. Susan left for work that morning thinking her husband was still asleep.
Rebecca, his assistant, came over and I said, call me when he's up or have him call me when he's up. And then she sent me a text. Said, he's not up yet. What should I do? And I said, wake him. And then she called me back.
What did she say?
I can't even, I'm sorry. That 20-minute car ride, I just screamed the whole way. Robin.
Did you get to see him?
Yes. I got to tell him, I forgive you with all my heart. You're the bravest man I've ever known. You know, we were living a nightmare.
When did you first notice that something wasn't quite right?
In November of 2013, he had a little gut pain. Next month, it was another symptom. It was like this endless parade of symptoms, and not all of them would raise their head at once. It was like playing whack-a-mole. Which symptom is it this month? I thought, is my husband a hypochondriac? We're chasing it and there's no answers, and by now, we tried everything.
Some answers finally came in May that year when Robin was diagnosed with early stages of Parkinson's disease. Did he ever do anything where you were afraid for his physical safety?
Yes. Yeah, July 24th. I was in the shower And all of a sudden I saw him lingering at his sink for a while. Something didn't seem right. And I opened up the door, and there was blood. This towel was so soaked with blood, and he was just dabbing his head. I just screamed, "Robin, what happened? What did you do?" And my best friend was sinking, you know? He pointed to the door, and I said, "Did you hit your head?" And he nodded. His only response was, "I miscalculated."
Did it ever cross your mind that he could be suicidal?
No. It was what was going on inside of his brain, the chemical warfare that no one knew about.
His autopsy later revealing he was suffering from a debilitating brain disorder, Lewy body dementia.
Lewy body dementia is a complex disorder with many different presentations. You can see very dramatic effects in thinking, emotions, and behavior.
Lewy body dementia killed Robin. It's what took his life. And that's what I've spent the last year trying to get to the bottom of. What took my husband's life?
Was he losing his mind?
Yes, absolutely. And he was aware of it. He was keeping it together as best as he could, but the last month he could not. It was like the dam broke.
And in that last week, doctors were planning to check him into a facility for neurocognitive testing.
Was this Robin's way of taking control back?
My opinion? Oh yeah. I think he was just saying no. And I don't blame him one bit.
Your last conversation with Robin, what was said?
So I was getting in bed, and he came in the room a couple of times, once to his closet, and he said, "Good night, my love." And I said, "Good night, my love." And then he came back again. He came out with his iPad, and he looked like he had something to do. And that was like, I think he's getting better. And then he said, "Good night." I said, "Good night." That was the last. I mean, he was sick and tired of what was going on. Absolutely. You know, when he got the Parkinson's diagnosis, you know, I mean, in one sense, it was like, this is it. This is what we've been chasing something, now we found it. And we felt the sense of relief, but also like, oh my God, what does this mean?
Today, while the world continues to remember Robin Williams for his iconic movies.
My favorite movie of Robin Williams was Robin Williams being a human being.
Not an actor.
Right. Best movie in the world.
And Susan told me that Robin was completely sober when he died and had been for 8 years. And she explained that they had been sleeping in separate bedrooms because he had trouble sleeping. That's a symptom, a classic trait of Lewy body dementia.
Now, I don't know about you guys, but she did not seem like she was really actually crying. She seemed like she dodged all of the questions. And she didn't even have a favorite Robin Williams movie. Like, that was such a cop-out of an answer. I didn't like it. Nothing about this interview feels genuine to me. It does not feel like this woman loved him. I can't believe that she actually went on TV and kind of said this. It almost seemed like she was preaching this Lewy body dementia because she didn't want any heat to be brought back onto possibly her or anybody else that might have been involved. But one of the weirdest and main things she says in this interview is that depression is not what killed Robin. This LBD, this Lewy body dementia is what did it. Like, yeah, maybe that is what did it because it made him feel depressed enough to eventually self-exit, right? Well, I don't know. So I wanted to look a little deeper into this, and I wanted to see what else possibly could have happened. Why is there so much speculation, and why are people not satisfied with this official ruling? And I think a part of it has to do with the fact that he's just one of the first people in a long line of other celebrities that meet the exact same demise as he did. It just leaves so many questions. People are wondering why, what's with the pattern? What is with this ritualistic looking occult style? What is happening? And aside from all of these other red flags having to do with Susan, one of the biggest ones for me was that immediately after the autopsy was performed, 1 day later on August 12th, 2014, Robin Williams was cremated. So who knows what is going on here? Because if the autopsy results are, for whatever reason, not accurate or being tampered with, there's no way for us to go back and have a second autopsy done. There's no way for us to double check these results, double check anything. What's done is done. And you know who made that call? Susan. Susan made that call. And okay, yeah, it's normal for spouses to act strange when their spouse passes away. I mean, I get it. It's not a normal situation and not everybody grieves the same. but still some weird stuff that was going on. But I wanted to give Susan the benefit of the doubt, so I was like, who else might have had stake in what happened with Robin? And I found some pretty interesting ties. One of the first ones I found is that he was working underneath Harvey Weinstein while producing the movie Good Will Hunting. And when Robin signed that deal, he actually made a deal with the company that if the box office sales from the movie running in theaters went over $100 million, then Robin would get paid double. But if it didn't hit the $100 million mark, then he would just split it normally, and the company and the executives would actually make more money off of, well, the whole deal, really. Once the movie started hitting about 90 million in sales in the box offices, Weinstein told everybody to start pulling the movie from theaters and start putting it out to DVD. That way it wouldn't hit over that $100 million threshold, and they wouldn't have to split the money or double pay Robin Williams. And this was all explained by the director of the movie, Kevin Smith, and he just came out in 2021 and kind of explained all of this and was explaining how Harvey Weinstein basically screwed Robin Williams in that whole deal. But not only that, but there was 2 other movies that Robin Williams worked on underneath Harvey Weinstein, and both of those movies ended up being a flop. So there's likely going to be some bad blood between these guys. I mean, I wouldn't imagine, as sweet and kind as Robin Williams is, I'm sure he wouldn't let it affect what's going on, but I can guarantee there was some negative feelings attached to that whole situation. And then later on, when all this stuff starts blowing up with the Me Too movement and Harvey Weinstein, it just makes you wonder, maybe Robin Williams knew a little something about Harvey Weinstein, and maybe he posed a threat to Harvey because he had screwed Robin over so many times in the past, and he knew a little too much about what he did in his personal time. So he could have been someone who targeted him. But I was like, well, there's no real concrete evidence that Robin Williams was really trying to speak out against any sort of exploitation at all. Wrong. Right before Robin Williams passed away, he was actually funding and encouraging and kind of coaching this guy, Barry Crimmins, who was starring in a film, basically like an autobiography film, where he talks about his journey as well as his, traumatic past, and then how he's turned everything to activism moving forward. Robin Williams provided major funding for this project, and the movie actually highlights Barry Crimmins' childhood, where he was actually abused and exploited as a child, and he now is a huge activist fighting against online predators and adults who are basically, he's like Chris Hansen. And this was all happening in 2014. So with Robin Williams working on this project with this other guy, Barry Crimmins, who's also a comedian, they're all in the industry, it just makes you wonder if maybe this book was just a precursor to try and start opening and blowing the whistle on all these things going on in Hollywood. That being what's going on with Harvey Weinstein, Diddy, Epstein, all the things that we now know about. The other connection that I found was there's a movie called Patch Adams, which I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with, where Robin Williams plays the main character, Patch Adams. It's essentially this doctor who believes in holistic medicine, and he believes in the power of laughter and just like helping the person feel better as opposed to just using medicines to treat them. And he's a, really well-renowned, respected doctor in the industry. He was such an activist and advocating for healthcare for everyone that he actually started this Gesundheit project where he opened up this clinic, and they were basically doing it free of charge. They relied on volunteers and his expertise and his wisdom, where they had people come through and experience this holistic medicine where he really focused on what he believed was the right way to treat people. The movie, of course, throws a love story and all this other stuff in there, but one of the big things that Patch Adams was known for is for dressing up as a clown and like going and visiting children and doing things in the hospitals and in the doctor's offices just to like lift spirits. But I found some pretty interesting stuff when I was researching the real Patch Adams. In 1987, down in Tallahassee, Florida, 2 gentlemen in a creepy white creeper van having 6 kids with them, all of them looking very unkept and very homely. There's a lot of people that were with or in the near area that were like, this doesn't seem right. And thank God somebody called the police and were like, something just doesn't feel right. There's these 2 weird looking guys. They've got these 6 kids. None of the kids seem well taken care of. They look malnourished, and I just am concerned for their well-being. So police get involved. They bring these 2 guys in for questioning. They bring the kids in, question them, try and figure out what's going on here. And essentially what they're able to figure out is that these guys have these kids, and they come from this commune called the Finders. Now, this group, the Finders, they're like I would call them a cult, but they're a commune of people from the Washington, D.C. area. Why these guys were down in Florida is never really explained. Essentially, they trace these guys back to this commune with the Finders back in Washington, D.C. The police are able to eventually locate the mothers of these actual kids, and the mothers all say, like, yeah, we used to be involved in this commune, I keep trying not to say cult, but it's a cult. They were involved in this cult a while back, but they're not anymore. And so I guess they just decided to leave their kids in the cult. I don't really understand at all. But upon further investigation, the police start searching this van because they connected it to the Finders in Washington, D.C. There's all this suspicion that something weird is going on with these kids and what they're doing with them. And they unearth a lot of CP and just a lot of weird stuff about just weird occult rituals, weird things that they do to discipline the kids, and just really strange ways of living, to be honest. They're all living in this like one little area or like one little house in Washington, D.C., and it's just a really strange culty situation. During their investigations, they had a confidential police source actually tell them, like, yo, this is a cult and this is a dangerous group of people. They do some weird stuff. There's like videos and writings about them doing animal bloodletting and talking about how they brainwash these children and keep children in chains. There's like pictures of children in chains. Just very strange stuff that should not be going on for sure. And so they, widen this investigation and they get this warrant to go in and bust through and search through this like Grover Park apartment complex or duplex that they're all living in. And they find a bunch of stuff that they don't want to have found, like CP, weird things that might be going on with kids, chains, weird books, satanic occult stuff, just lots of weird stuff going on with this whole cult situation. Now, where this all gets really crazy, when they did this raid and they found all of these different documents, photos, weird things, books, writings, all of this evidence to lead them to believe that something weird is going on here, they didn't end up doing anything about it. The police had arrested the 2 guys initially that were found with those 6 kids, but because they couldn't find a substantial amount of evidence to be able to prove anything, they eventually had to just let all these guys go. The other weird thing is that the CIA got involved, because if it was something nefarious, like something going on with child exploitation, then it's definitely something that the feds would need to get involved with. But the CIA got involved and then very quickly got uninvolved. They removed the case from their list. They told everybody that they didn't need to look into it. They basically said there was no evidence collected that would lead them to believe that something was going on. And so they pretty much just closed the case, which has led to tons of speculation about the possible CIA involvement in this whole ring, about it maybe being a training ground for some of their agents. We really don't know. But why did they close this case up when they had so much obvious evidence? I mean, they collected tons of photos and documents of CP and like all these other things that were going on, and yet somehow they don't have enough evidence to do anything? Something's fishy. But that's just the tip of the iceberg, you guys. Because as I was looking through these FBI vault documents, which are official FBI released documents, I had Grok analyze them for me because it was like 300 pages of stuff. And funny enough, he found that there's this doctor that this group, the Finders, used to treat people within the commune. This doctor's name was Hunter Patch Adams. And yes, I know what you're thinking. Is it the same, like, Patch Adams as, like, the one from the movie? Yeah, it's the same guy, same dude. They're saying that this doctor was treating all of these children that were in this really awful situation, any of the mothers that were having kids. And essentially the idea is that they were grooming these kids and these mothers in this commune to then have more kids and continue growing this commune, essentially. Like I said, it's a cult. Then if you couple that with the information that we know that Patch Adams started a free clinic where he was trying to help people for free, helping women, children, patients of all types, help them get better and heal. Who knows what kind of nefarious stuff he was doing with this free clinic that's probably not being really investigated in any way because it's literally a charity, essentially. And we've seen in my past episodes what these foundations and these charities are truly capable of. But immediately I realized, like, Robin Williams is a great actor. In order to immerse himself into the role, into what he's doing, I would imagine he puts in tons of hours of research into who the hell this person is, especially if it's a real person who actually existed, not just some fictional character that he has to understand. He actually could talk to this guy and learn about this guy and know exactly who this guy was. Who's to say that he didn't stumble across these files, these FBI files, or at least these allegations and theories about what he was involved with? Because there's a whole lot of people out there that believe that Patch Adams was not the super sweet, nice, funny, fun-loving doctor with good intentions like everybody thought. Maybe he was running some sort of charity operation where he was able to source people, children, whatever. Maybe do things that were a little more nefarious. He's literally called out by name in these FBI vault files. What? You can't get more direct than that. So with these two pieces of information, I was definitely intrigued. But I still couldn't figure out exactly how they might have been tied to what happened to Robin. And really the only person who was around, the only person who could have had anything to do with it, the last person to see him alive, and the first person to choose to not see him unalive, and almost seemingly removing herself from the situation as if she knew what she was going to find if she went in there first. I had more suspicions about Susan. In a lot of my other episodes, the Kim Porter episode, the Aaron Carter episode, Brittany Murphy, I'll Be Sure, I talk a lot about handlers. And I'm sure most of you guys have heard about celebrity handlers. And honestly, if there aren't celebrity handlers, there probably should be, because some of these celebrities probably could use a little handling. But I don't think that that's exactly what they are supposed to be doing. And one thing we typically see when we see these handlers come in is they seem to come out of nowhere. They're not another famous person. They're just some random person, and they end up showing up, and there's just always this weird dynamic. But one of the number one clues is that they tend to isolate this celebrity from the rest of the world, from their family, from everything. And that's exactly what Susan did. Robin Williams' kids said that they really hadn't talked to him very much over the course of the last 3 years that he'd been married to Susan. They didn't know that he'd been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. They didn't know anything about the possibility of dementia. They didn't even know that he was struggling with his health at all. So imagine that, if your dad just passed away so suddenly, but your supposed stepmom knew the entire time that he was struggling with these diseases and these issues, but didn't say anything. That's a little sus. Robin was also a huge donor to the Michael J. Fox Foundation, which directly supports Parkinson's disease. So I would think that if he ended up with a diagnosis of Parkinson's, that he would at least be open and upfront and talk about it with somebody like Michael J. Fox, or I don't know, I just wouldn't imagine him being secretive about it, especially when he so openly supports a friend and a foundation promoting awareness and research and things into the disease. It just didn't make any sense to me why he would keep it hidden, and suddenly Susan is preaching to the world about how they knew all about it. In my opinion, she either was ignoring it or they didn't know anything about it. I don't know. Something's weird. The thing that really just didn't sit well with me was the 12-hour gap between Robin Williams going to bed and when he was found the next day. He should have been found by his wife, because I know myself, maybe I just have different tendencies or whatever, but if my partner, I knew they were struggling with a very serious, debilitating, degenerative disease, I would check on them pretty frequently. I would especially check on them if I was going to leave the house. Even if I thought the door was closed because he was still asleep, I would have at least opened it, peeked in, checked, saw like, oh, okay, he's still asleep. Lazy asshole. No, I'm just kidding. But I would have been like, oh, he's still asleep. Like, okay, I'm going to go run some errands. Maybe leave a cute little note for him. Like, hey, I love you. I hope you're having a great morning and you had great dreams, but I'm at the store. But no, she didn't do any of that. She just saw the door was closed, said he's probably sleeping comfortably in those small children's bunk beds, and then she blazed out to go to the store, knowing that the personal assistant would be there shortly after, roughly an hour later. And then lo and behold, the personal assistant ends up being the one to find Robin. It just seems weird, that 12-hour gap, she never checked on him one time. Even Zelda, Robin's daughter, says she didn't check on him for over 12 hours, and yet you say you love this man, you say you care about this man, you say that his love was the best thing you ever experienced. I certainly don't see it. The other thing that didn't really sit well with me, and was kind of a huge red flag, was the fact that Susan went head-to-head in a legal battle with Robin Williams' 3 children. In his estate, he didn't have like what you'd say is like just a will that gets dispersed to people. He had actually sectioned off pieces of his estate and given certain things to certain people. And since both of his ex-wives have already been taken care of in the previous divorce settlements, he had included Susan in his will as of 2012. And the only way that she was included was she was supposed to receive the house that they owned in Tiburon, California, and all of the expenses for the house, property taxes, any possible maintenance, money that they would need. And pretty much it was like $50,000 a month that needed to go into this place. And he set that all aside for her so she could just live in this house and never have to worry about it. I think that's a pretty sweet deal. But once the estate started getting split up, she filed a motion with the courts asking, how do I know specifically what I am and am not in my rights to keep and take? Because basically she was trying to sell stuff that she didn't technically get from the estate. She was selling stuff that actually belonged to the kids. And so she asked the question of like, well, what am I actually entitled to? Because she didn't get any money. So I feel like she was really hurting in that aspect. I'm not getting any money, so I got to do something. What am I going to get? And the kids were actually the ones that were awarded a lot of the assets, a lot of the finances, which makes sense. They're his kids. Like, I don't know. But she goes head to head in a legal battle, and they eventually decide to settle outside of court. And she eventually does end up with $6 million out of the deal. And she does get the house. And then the kids are awarded any personal belongings, as well as, I think, like $50 million or something in finances. Pretty crazy. Robin Williams' estate was worth between $50 and $100 million. Dude was rich. So tell me that this is a cash grab without telling me it's a cash grab.
Susan Williams is speaking out for the first time since his death. And Amy, as she's grieving her husband, she's also had this legal battle with his kids.
That's right. This morning, Susan Williams opening up about that heated legal battle over Robin's estate. And she is also giving us a look inside the very private life she built with Robin Williams.
I just keep doing the things that work,
For years, she was the woman behind legendary funny man
Fussy, 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 you do Martha Graham, Martha Graham, Martha Graham, or Twyla.
Robin Williams.
It's against intergalactic law to eat fellow space travelers. Fly, be free!
When we think of Robin Williams, this larger-than-life, big-hearted guy, as funny gets. Hello! Was he the same guy that we all think we know?
No. Robin is kind, quiet, and sometimes funny at home,
But not always funny.
Oh, no. He was meditative, contemplative, intellectual, and sometimes very, very funny.
But in the months before his death, she began to see that Robin slowly fade away.
He's such a beautiful, genius, amazing person, and he's so talented. There was nothing, his fears and insecurities were killing him.
And the day before he put an end to those personal demons, taking his own life, she believed her husband was getting better.
It was the perfect day. We just did what we love to do together. And I know now that he gave me that perfect day. He gave us that perfect day.
He planned it.
In hindsight, he knew what he was doing.
After his death, a media frenzy ensued as she became embroiled in a contentious legal battle with Robin's children, her stepkids, over his estate.
Why did you decide to take legal action?
I was forced into it, basically. 2.5 weeks after Robin had left, I was still in shock, not back in our home. I was told that I might not be able to keep our wedding gifts, that, in fact, while you're out of the house, we need to come in and take everything out. Eventually, once we've gone through it all, tell us which items are yours, and we'll decide whether or not that's true. And I'll never forget being on the phone with one of the trustees and saying, what is this? I know Robin Williams is famous. He's my husband. He's my husband. If we're talking that you guys think everything is memorabilia, then take me. He's touched me. Where does this end?
In early October, they settled the case out of court.
What agreements were reached?
Basically what my husband wanted, which was just that I could live in the home until I die, that it would be taken care of. Every inch of that home has our laughter, our playfulness, our joy, our tears.
She's now taking life one moment at a time.
They say time heals all wounds. Has time eased your pain at all?
It's not that those wounds ever go away. It's not that the pain goes away. It's that you get stronger. But it's always there. It takes, it's always there.
And a lawyer for the Williams children told the Associated Press the children are relieved to have this behind them. Today, Susan says she is living a quieter life in the home she shared with Robin. And the biggest lesson she told me she learned from him, the golden rule, treat others the way you would like to be treated. But she speaks about him in present tense. She says he's around her every day. She has his slippers exactly where he left them, on the bathroom floor. And she said that is where they will stay.
It does feel like we still have
he's still here.
Yeah.
Thanks, Amy.
Sure.
My impression was too good. It's not your fault. It's okay.
Oh, and if that's not enough for you, she also goes on to fight with the kids over wanting to write this tell-all book. She wants to tell her side of the story and tell about Robin Williams' experience with Lewy body dementia, and she just seems to be really harping on this whole activism thing in honor of Robin Williams. And so she wants to really write this book, but the kids say, no, please don't. You're just going to be exploiting his image, exploiting his name, and he doesn't want that. He really does not want that. The other thing that I read that was kind of interesting is that Robin Williams' lawyer was talking about how he would have been extremely upset to find out that Susan had basically openly explained to the world exactly what was involved with Robin Williams' estate. He was a very private guy. He was a very private individual when it came to his finances. And he also had his poop in a group. He had his finances very much in order for if something like this did happen. He had literally everything designated out to who it was going to, how much, and how it was going to happen. So for her to just go out and then start this legal drama, which basically gets all of his dirty laundry and all of his information spread to the entire world, essentially, the lawyer said he would not have been stoked to hear that. He would have been really upset, actually, about that. So yet again, tell me you don't love this guy without telling me you don't love this guy. And then, you guys, as if she couldn't do anything else, all she got out of the estate was that house in Tiburon, California, which I'm assuming is probably a multi-million-dollar house. Okay, I actually just looked. It's worth $5.8 million. And not only did they sell one of his other properties, and she got to claim in on some of that, she sold it for like $18 million when it was actually worth $30 million. But then she sold this property, which was the only thing she was given from the estate. And I've got proof of that because on Truth Finder, it says that she's no longer the owner. This is a previously owned property. So, I mean, if that... Really? That was in 2021. So she held on to the property, and then maybe when she needed money or finally was just like, okay, I'm ready to move on or something, I don't know. Then she sells the house. To me, if Robin Williams left me his house and paid for the house for the rest of eternity, like, I'm living in that house. I ain't leaving that house. WTF, that's so weird. And it was definitely a red flag in my book. It just seems like everything that she's doing is a huge cash grab. And because of that, it led me to believe that maybe what happened to Robin was her trying to ensure, with him slowly declining the way he was, that maybe he didn't, in a weird place in his dementia, suddenly walk down to the will office and change everything and write her out of it. And then the other piece of that is, why were they sleeping in separate beds? She says it's because he couldn't sleep because of his Parkinson's. But if my partner and I were in the situation that they were in, say my girl had Parkinson's and she was having a hard time sleeping, unless it was because of me, which I wouldn't really understand why it'd be me that was causing her to not be able to sleep. There's no reason for us to split out of beds. I'm her partner, I'm going to stay in that same bed and be there to make sure she's okay. It doesn't make any sense. What does make sense is what a lot of people speculate, and what the children actually say, is that their relationship was on the rocks. They were headed for divorce, and that's why they were sleeping in separate bedrooms. So the fact that she's spinning the story to make it seem like they were such a cute couple and they were so in love and everything was just perfect and she never saw this coming just doesn't make any sense. And honestly, it just gave me serious handler vibes. Made me feel like she's just in it for the money. She was paid to be there in the first place. She popped up out of nowhere, started isolating Robin. In some of these pictures, he literally doesn't even look happy with her, but she looks overly stoked to the moon to be hanging out with him. It's just super weird. I don't know. And I guess just as the final proof to really show that, well, she's really exploiting his passing and she's really jumping on this whole activism bandwagon. And I would imagine that that's probably for some financial gain. But not only is she super involved in all these, mental health awareness things and Alzheimer's and dementia foundations where she kind of helps through using her artwork and just kind of using Robin's story. But she has also come out with 2 separate documentaries talking about Robin Williams and his struggle with this Lewy body dementia. One of them is called Robin's Wish, And I don't remember the name of the other one. It's called like The Shock or something like that. She's come out with 2 documentaries about it. She's written multiple different books and articles. She's written the #1 most popular article on like some neurology magazine. So she's definitely got some notoriety behind what's going on, and she's definitely milking the situation for everything that it's worth. I mean, in one way, yes, it's great that she's spreading awareness and raising awareness about what Lewy body dementia is, but it feels very much selfish as opposed to her just doing it for the memory of Robin. That's just my feeling. I want to know what you guys think, though, because obviously you guys probably went through the same situation, probably had no idea what was going on. And now hearing all this, I'm kind of curious what you think may have been going on with Susan. Was there something deeper going on that I missed? Or maybe Susan is completely innocent of everything. And maybe what really happened is that her story doesn't line up because Robin Williams never passed at all. In fact, he's on Instagram right now as Pappy, posting videos daily with his shirt off in the bayou. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, just go check out Pappy's freaking Instagram profile. So weird, so cryptic, and I'll tell you what, super funny. I love watching it, which is what makes me feel like it even more could be Robin Williams, because he's hilarious, he loves doing accents, and he literally looks just like him. So, I don't know. You guys tell me. Drop it in the comments. Is that Robin Williams or what? All I can tell you guys is that Robin Williams just had such kindness in his eyes. He just had the softest eyes. And I feel like emanated such a beautiful personality, such a beautiful aura. He just seemed like such a genuinely awesome dude. I would have loved to have been able to talk to him about all this stuff and just ask him his perspective. But unfortunately, he's not here with us. And it's super sad to say that might be because he was taken out, not just by this Lewy body dementia. He could have had a good 5 to 8 years, but maybe somebody had financial reasons, financial motives to get him out of the picture to make sure that their position was secured. Very interesting, very confusing, and super heartbreaking because who doesn't love Robin Williams? I mean, like I mentioned before, he was in so many good movies. Drop in the comments what your favorite Robin Williams movie is. And if you want to watch more of my movies, because I make home movies, I'm sitting here at my house right now, then I've got a whole playlist. I'll put that right here. It's called Sobering Stories Podcast. It's got every video I've ever done, ever. This video is part of my Hung series, for obvious reasons. And I'm going to put that playlist right down here at the bottom because, well, if you haven't watched the other ones in the series, then you should, because they're really good. And some of the information overlaps into each one because it's a series. But if you haven't subscribed to my channel, I'm a little disappointed. I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. But it's okay because that subscribe button is right here. Hit that. We'll call it a deal, okay? We'll call it even. And the last one here, I don't even know what video this is going to be. Literally, I have no idea. I choose best for viewer, which means that YouTube is going to choose the best video for you. So you might be interested in this one. But that's all I got for you guys this week. Thank you for sitting and listening to me talk about Robin Williams and his tragic story and some of the peculiarities surrounding it. Peculiarities? Is that a word? But I look forward to joining you guys next week for another one. But until then, stay safe, stay sober, make somebody laugh today because laughter is medicine. Later, sobers.
Let's go.